This is going to be my next build project, and I should have that on the channel in a couple of days. It's Hawaiian monkey pod veneer. The trim on the front to hide the edge of the plywood is zebra wood. I didn't have any solid Hawaiian monkey pod boards, but I did have some zebra wood, and I think it's a good match. I wanted to make a separate video on just the finishing, because anytime you're finishing a box and you're painting the inside, it can be difficult, and there's a few tricks and there's a few different ways to do it. And this time I'm doing it a different way. I'm not going to spray. I figured a lot of people don't have spray equipment, and this might be an easier way to do it with good results. So first I want to mention that you can see that this box is resting on these nailers. The bottom of the box you'll never see, so I don't mind those screw holes. And I'm using styrofoam, so I can move this box around, flip it around, and I'm not worried about damaging the corners or the veneer or the finish. So I'll go ahead and get this set up, and then I'll show you how I'm going to paint the inside of the box. The first step in this process was to finish the outside of the box first, including the front edge. I used Waterlox, which is basically a wipe-on varnish. If you don't have Waterlox, you could also use wipe-on poly. Minwax makes a good wipe-on poly. And what that does is it seals the wood, and it will prevent it from absorbing any of the paint. Even though I am going to use painter's tape to get a nice clean line, any paint that may get under the painter's tape or where the line isn't really defined, I should be able to remove after I remove the tape with a little steel wool. So the next step here, since the box is finished, is to tape out, and here you want to take your time and make sure you're right at the line or right at the edge of that trim molding. This is the yellow frog tape that's used for delicate surfaces, and I think that this gives me the sharpest line. I'm starting with the back of the box first, and this is a primer. This is Fresh Start by Benjamin Moore. It's an acrylic latex primer. So I'll paint the back, then I'll paint the sides, then the bottom and top. The problem that you would have spraying a project like this is the back of the box is attached. It's not going to be attached later. So you have to finish it in place. And when you're spraying into a cabinet like this, you create a lot of overspray. So painting it with a brush like this, I think, is a good solution. I let the primer dry, and then I sanded it with 150 grit sandpaper and then vacuumed up all the dust. I like to use a dry brush when I'm using the vacuum. It really helps you to get into those corners. You want to make sure you remove any dust so the dust doesn't mix with your finished paint. For the finished paint, I'm using Benjamin Moore's Command. This is White Dove. The color is White Dove, and it's a gloss finish. I'll use 2 coats, and again, I'm going to start with the back. It's been about an hour since I painted the second coat. It's dry. I mean, it's not super dry, but it's dry enough to remove the tape. And so I'll hope for the best. And I'll bring the camera in once I start so you can get a good look at it. And so far, so good. Oop, you see there? Got a little bleed right here. Little bleed here too. I'll be able to clean all this up, at least I think so. I might let the paint dry a little bit longer before I deal with it. But you can see I've got not a perfect line here, but I should be able to take care of that. I let the paint dry a little more overnight so it's nice and cured. And originally I was going to use steel wool, but I just think that 320 sandpaper and a sanding block will work better. And I'm just going to lightly sand along that edge. And then over here where I have that bleed, I'll try to remove that without removing too much of the finish. Okay, I think that corner looks pretty good now. But if we go over here, you can see this edge isn't great. And again, I'm going to use the sanding block and just blend that in. Sometimes I'll remove the sanding block and use my hand just like that. I think that looks a lot better. All right, I think that looks pretty good. And the last thing I'm going to do is add one more coat of finish to the outside edge, being careful not to get any of the finish on the inside of the box. And I'll add one more coat to the outside. It's the next day and the varnish is dry, and as you can see, I've got a nice sharp line between the painted finish and the natural finish. And I think that this is a good way to do it. I've finished the inside of boxes with a natural edge before, and I've done it a bunch of different ways. And I think for especially a small project like this, and one where the back is already attached so you can't get in from the back, this might be the best way to do it. We'll see. You can tell me what you think in the comments. But the results are good. It didn't take that long to finish. And I like the Benjamin Moore Command paint. It's a pretty tough paint. And let's say that the inside of the box gets dirty just from wear and tear. It won't be that difficult to freshen it up again with another coat of paint. And I can deal with the edge the same way I did in this video. One more tip. If you end up getting paint, let's say in the miter or in a deep part of the grain, what I often will use is a fine Sharpie, and I'll just carefully kind of paint that in there, almost putting a little bit of the marker in the on top of the white paint and then kind of buffing it out with my finger. And in fact, I'm going to look and see if I can find a dark brown and maybe even a light brown. I think they make these in different colors. And it would be a good tool to have when you're trying to just take care of things like that. And then once you finish over that Sharpie, it's not going to go anywhere. So I did do that on the inside of this miter, I think, and you'd be very hard pressed to find it. If you didn't know, I'm now doing a podcast with Jeff from Green Street Joinery. It comes out every Saturday morning, or no, every Friday morning at 5 a.m. And we also have the Today's Craftsman channel, and we post videos to that channel every Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. So if you're not subscribed or if you haven't checked any of those things out, I'll have links to both down in the description below. And if you're looking to build the furniture for your home, I have a ton of furniture projects on my website, and they all have video tutorials right here on YouTube. So I hope that you'll check those out. It's a lot of fun to see all the different pieces of furniture that people from all over the world build. So if you do build a piece of furniture from my channel or from my website, I hope that you'll post it on Instagram so I can see what you made and share it on my Instagram. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.